Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Performance Management Process Training. I am Lisa Prasad, so I am the Senior Coordinator of Talent Management at TRCA. And today we'll be exploring our new performance management process. Now, this session should take about an hour. If you do have any questions after this session, please feel free to send me an email or reach out to me. My email address is lprasad@trca.on.ca, or you can give me a call. My extension is 5647. So let's get started by looking at what is performance management. Now, performance management is a process encompassing all activities related to improving employee performance, productivity, and effectiveness. Performance management is ongoing and cyclical in nature, with the process really being broken down into three very high-level phases. The first is planning, second is coaching and feedback, and the third is review. Now, the foundation of performance management is the review or summary process, which really provides employees with an accurate understanding of their goals, their responsibilities, any objectives, and also tools required for them to complete their job, and also provides a way for a system of ongoing feedback to ensure that they are on the right track. So it seems simple enough, but yet still when we hear about performance reviews and appraisals and year-end assessments, we do feel a little queasy in the pit of our stomachs when we hear this. And we really want to change that, that view when it comes to performance review or performance management. So having said that, at TRCA, we always believed in the continuous development of employees in the organization. And having said that, we had developed what was called the Employee Development Plan as a start. But through, I guess, the development of the, through the development of this tool, it was identified that the document became too long, wasn't easy to use, it wasn't clear, it didn't flow quite well, there were no clear guidelines as to how to set goals, and feedback only happened once a year, if that. So we definitely wanted to change that view and incorporate a new process that would really guide employees through their careers and their development and their jobs throughout TRCA. So having said that, this is what our new process will look like. So at a very high level, you can see we have planning, coaching and feedback, and review. So under planning, types of activities that will be completed is work plan activities. So this is a new tool for us, as well as a PDP or a professional development plan. During the coaching and feedback phase, what we will continue to work on is the work plan. And then finally, at the end of the year, this is where we will be in the review phase, in which we will go through the APS or the annual performance summary. So next is a very high level of what our performance management process calendar will look like. Because this is a new process for us in the organization, what we are looking at doing is obviously having some flexibility when it comes to the process, at least for the first year, until we really get a good process going. So having said that, in December 1st to January 15th, typically what will happen is we would conduct the annual performance summary and finalize any work plans for the following year. Again, because this is a new process, what we're looking at is not doing the APS this year, but in fact doing the APS next year, 2015. So we really want you to focus on from December 1st to January 15th on the work plan and the PDP. So this is the basis really for providing that feedback for the APS. So again, focus will be on starting this year, December 1st to January 15th, on the work plan and the PDP. What will happen in January is all work plans will be completed no later than January 15th. And then at that point in time, we expect employees to start discussions with their managers on the PDP. In February, employees are to finalize their professional development plans with their supervisors or managers. And if needed, work plans can be adjusted to include activities from the PDP. So we'll talk about this a little bit later. What you will notice that's new to this whole process is that we will be having quarterly check-in meetings when it comes to the work plan. Now again, the reason why we've decided to have these quarterly check-in meetings is to ensure that continuous feedback of the employees' accountabilities and objectives for the year, just to ensure that employees are on the right track and they have the tools that they need to be successful for the year. So what we've done again is establish these quarterly check-in meetings, which will take place one in April, one in July, and then one in October. And then finally in December again, we will begin the process again. Now, as I mentioned, the annual performance summary, which is really going to summarize the full year. The first one will be conducted next December 2015. Okay, so as you can see, and through going through this calendar, what really changed is that this is going to be a combined effort between the employees and the managers. So managers and employees will actually be completing all these activities together. So that means the work plans will be completed together, the PDPs, as well as the APS. Of course, before going into any of these meetings, you're going to want to prepare ahead of time, so just be sure that you allocate enough time for preparation before coming into these meetings. Okay. So, what I'd like to do is actually take the next step and introduce to you the TRCA Cultural Guiding Principles. And really this came about from our employee engagement survey that we had previously this year. And through those the engagement survey, we had formed a focus group. And through this focus group, they had identified some guiding principles or behaviors we wanted employees to always keep in mind when they are conducting their day-to-day work. So let's go through this now. So the first one is at TRCA, we communicate openly. So this really means that we listen to each other. We listen well to understand before seeking to be understood. We are concise and precise in our messaging, and we share ideas easily. We are open and honest about what we do and how we do it. We are courageous, so we take smart risks. We take on difficult challenges, and we speak our minds to make things better. We make tough decisions in a timely manner, and we question behaviors that contradicts the best interests of TRCA and our community. We are curious, so we're eager to learn. We seek to understand all points of views. And we seek to understand TRCA, its vision, mission, and strategies. And we also seek knowledge about our communities and ways to impact them. Next, we work carefully. So although we want to take risks and learn, we want to make sure that we continue to work carefully, meaning that we are still thorough in our work that we do, and we carry out our work on time. We consider implications before we act or speak, and we strive to be more effective. We are selfless, so we act in the best interests of TRCA and its communities. We help others succeed. We are proactively generous, and we seek ways to improve the well-being of others. We also show respect and recognition, so this is really giving thanks. And we show gratitude, and we make commitments, and we keep them, so no empty promises. We acknowledge and compliment the achievement of others, and we provide supportive feedback to others, both positive and constructive. So again, what we would like to do is for all employees to incorporate this in the day-to-day work. Now, as we continue and before we start looking at the individual activities through this process, I wanted to just mention some quick best practices that came up through some of these focus groups. The first, again, is planning ahead before your meetings. So as I mentioned, really all these activities of the work plan, the professional development plan, and the APS, they will be completed jointly between the manager and the employee, as it will give employees a real understanding as to what they're responsible for that year, and they really have a say as to how their work will get done. So because of that, what we would ask is that before going to those meetings that you really do plan ahead and put all your notes together. If you have any supporting documentation, both the supervisor and employees, please have that information together before heading to your meeting. The next is documents to be saved in a secure and confidential location, so not on the shared drive. So if you are working off of your laptop or your desktop, what you can do is go ahead and save it directly onto your hard drive. Some of you use some cloud-based type databases such as Dropbox. You can absolutely go ahead and save your documentation in those locations. Just be sure that there is no confidential information indicated in those documents. So the documents itself or the templates itself that we will go through later doesn't really lend any chance for you to actually include any type of confidential information. But nonetheless, we just wanted to make sure that you are aware that it should really pertain to or what should be on there at the most is, of course, your name, your department, your manager's name, and then, again, the summary and the feedback that you both have for the year. Next is really for the managers, so create a folder for each employee. So for managers, this will just really help you in organizing documentation for your team, so it's quickly accessible for you when you need to refer to it. Next, you may have as many versions as needed, and just be sure that you have a clear naming convention. So for example, as you can see, I have Rose Bush, APS December 2013. If Rose Bush's manager wanted to make a change or an edit, what they would do is actually go back in and resave the document after the changes under Rose Bush, APS December 2013, and then version 2. Again, this just keeps a log of all the changes, so that way you can easily go back and refer to that documentation. Okay. So the next thing we'll be looking at is the work plan, and really the work plan in its simplest form is a list of objectives, goals, responsibilities, any projects and major tasks listed in one document, as well as how those objectives or goals will be completed along with timelines and comments. So what I will do is actually toggle over to the work plan. Okay. And as you can see, it is a very simple form. We wanted to make these forms very simple to use, easy to use, so that you are comfortable with including information on there where it's clear and there is no confusion. So we didn't want it to make it threatening. We wanted to make it simple and easy to use. So at the top, we will have basic information. So this is where employees would indicate their name, and it is a text box. We have supervisor name as well, where there's a text box, so you can go ahead and enter that information in there. In the first column, we have, on page 1, health and safety objectives for the year. So on this page, this is actually a mandatory field for staff and for managers and supervisors. So the first section is for all staff to complete. So here is a list of health and safety objectives that employees are responsible for the year. Having said that, employees may be responsible for all the objectives listed, or there may be a few. So depending on the role of the employee, under how the objectives will be completed, you will either indicate how the objective will be completed, so it may be reviewing or going online onto Safety 24/7, for example, for the first one, and completing it every year on your anniversary date. If any of these do not apply to your employees, then what you would do is just indicate not applicable. Okay? Now just below that we have a section for supervisors and managers to complete. Now the objectives listed under this section for supervisors and managers are mandatory. So managers, I shouldn't see any not applicables over here, as all of these are applicable to your role. So again, like with your staff, what you would do is just indicate on your work plan how your objectives will be completed under health and safety. Now for both managers and supervisors and staff, if for some reason the objectives are not listed here, there's actually an other section where you can type in any additional objectives pertaining to health and safety in that area. Okay. Now again, how the objectives will be completed, you will indicate in this section, and again, if it's not applicable, then you would just indicate an A. Under timelines, what you would do is indicate a specific date. It could be a couple months from now, or it could be something ongoing when it comes to obtaining your objective under health and safety. Okay? And then in the last section, we have comments or notes. So this, again, is just a free format area where you can indicate any notes or comments with regards to you obtaining your objective, your health and safety objective for the year. Okay? Now, the next section is where you're going to list any major objectives, projects, responsibilities, and tasks that you have for the year. Now, before we get into that, what I wanted to do is just do a quick review of objective setting. And I know most of you have heard of SMART goals. So let me just pull up that information for you. And here we go. So when it comes to SMART goals, this is a standard format that that we look at when it comes to objective setting. Now, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Now, what I wanted to say is that when it comes to objective setting, at times, goals can't follow this SMART format, as sometimes objectives can be somewhat subjective, especially when it comes to observing behavioral type things. So what we like to say is that just try to be as detailed as possible when it comes to setting objectives and goals for yourself. So an example of that, I just have below on the slide, is decrease the time to respond to a customer inquiry by the end of this quarter. Next is by the end of the 6-month watershed restoration project, a minimum of 2 digger logs and 25 brush mats will be installed along a 500-meter portion of the Humber River. And the final example is Project X was to be completed on time and on budget. So again, as you can see with the last example, it is very simple, but again, it has some specific objectives or details that must be completed, so it being completed on time and within the budget that was assigned. Okay? The next slide is just a list of verbs that you can incorporate when it comes to setting objectives. Again, these are just some examples you can use. Okay? So what I'd like to do is just toggle back over to the work plan and we can go through this together. Okay? So under the first category, we have, again, listing your major objectives, projects, responsibilities, and major tasks. So what you would do, again, is list this information, and within the next column, we have itemized key deliverables. So this is where you would list any major task associated with you meeting your major objective or your major projects or responsibilities or major tasks. So for example, on my work plan, my manager, I should actually say, had her objective as being overseeing the development of a learning management system. What I actually did is took her objective and broke it down a little further from my objective. So what this is demonstrating is how I'm actually contributing to the overall organizational objective or the team's objective. So I took her objective and broke it down into develop 5 e-learning courses for employees on the learning management system. When I wanted to break it down into more specific deliverables, I actually included that I will create specific trainings under communication, a specific training under conflict management, another under risk management, and a few others I had listed under key deliverables. So again, breaking it down into specifics. Now for those of you who are working on projects, what may happen is that you may have a very broad project listed under here that you'll be working on, and then under key deliverables is literally what you would want to do is list any specific milestones or tasks that you will need in order to get this project completed. Okay? Now, how this objective will impact the TRCA strategic plan and business plans is where you're going to indicate how your objective, again, is impacting in a positive manner either your team objective or your team plans, the business plan, or the strategic plan. So my specific objective had a direct correlation to our strat plan, in which we are supporting the development or continuous learning of our employees. So again, that would be developing a learning management system would be one of the ways that we are impacting the strat plan or fulfilling that strat plan. So again, that's just an example of what I had used in my work plan. The next column is timelines or time frames in which you would complete the objective or project or a major task. So again, in this section, very similar to the health and safety section, you would indicate timelines. So it could be a couple of months, it could be a specific date, especially if you're working on a project. Or you can even indicate carry forward. So some of you may be working on projects that won't be completed within the year. So this is where you will indicate a specific year, the specific year that it would take to be completed. Now the next column is where you would list any comments or notes pertaining to the employee achieving the objective or project or major task. So green would mean completed, so we'd actually have to highlight your comment in green if it's completed. If it's a work in progress, you are highlighted in blue. And then if the project or objective is delayed, you would highlight that purple. Now again, this comments area is not meant to directly comment on someone personally. It's more to reflect the status of the project or objective or where the work is at that point in time. And the reason why we ask this to be highlighted is really because it will provide an easy way for senior managers to look at the work plans and identify any items they need to direct attention to. So if there is, for example, a delay in a project because item A was not received in time, then that is the comment that you would put under comments and then highlight it in purple. So that way, perhaps the senior manager or director can engage the party in which you're waiting for documentation and perhaps put some other plans in place to ensure you receive what you need to receive to complete your project or your objective on time. Okay, so again, it's really focusing on the status of completing an objective or a major task or a project. Okay. Now, the next section I'd like to take a look at is innovation and improvement. So this is a new section for us. We didn't have it previously in our employee development plan. So now what we've done is incorporate it into our work plan as we do feel it's important. So again, innovation and improvements. So this is where employees will list any new innovative ideas or suggestions on how to improve their work or process at TRCA. Okay. Now what will happen is employees, if you do have any comments that you or ideas you'd like to list here, the expectation is that you're going to have this conversation on this great idea with your manager and explore it a little further to see if it's something that can be built on or determine if it's something that your manager can take forward to the directors committee and maybe hopefully implement the idea or the objective or the suggestion in the organization. So again, it's an outlet in providing that great idea. Let's take a closer look, I should say, at innovation. And sorry, just skipping ahead. So innovation is many things and is driven by many elements and defined by process as well as outcomes. Innovation can come from anyone and really from anywhere. And what really drives innovation? So things like personal interest. So someone may be really interested in a specific topic and they want to find new and creative ways of doing things, and those are the types of things that drives innovation. So things like personal interests. Autonomy at work. So someone may want to look at a different way of doing things at work to help increase autonomy. So that's another thing that drives innovation. Things like scarcity. Problems that won't go away. diverse groups and opinions, conferences or courses, and just a plain old whack on the head. So you'll have that light bulb moment that you know you have a great idea and you want to bring it forward. So employees on the work plan, it's really providing you with that outlet. And we've had some great outcomes from innovation, which include new sustainable practices, new customers or audience, fundamental changes in thinking, designing and doing things, increased productivity, the looking at lean processes, and increased collaboration. Okay. Now, when it comes to the innovation process, it can really be captured in various ways. So as I mentioned, one of them is definitely the work plan. And really, at any point during the year, innovation should be discussed and identified. So if it's not during your final or your initial meeting in establishing your work plan, it can be throughout the year in your checkpoint meetings. You can actually fill in that information if you have a great idea you'd like to share. We've also talked about having a suggestion box, so perhaps a physical box at every location, or having a virtual location, so perhaps on our employee blog or some type of virtual locations to indicate that, in which perhaps employees can vote on ideas. So again, that's another idea where we're looking at. You can see innovation through our strategic plan, and especially through new projects or changes in scope in a project. Okay. Now, the next section I would like to take a look at on the work plan is challenges. So this is where managers or employees can list any other challenges that's not listed above in the section under comments and notes under your major objectives, responsibilities, and tasks. So again, things like your manager may need to make note of a potential performance gap in an employee's work. So typically when a performance gap happens is if an employee is assigned a task but they don't quite have the competent skills to complete that task. So that's called performance gap, and that may happen from time to time. So under the challenges section, that's where a manager may indicate a potential performance gap in which an employee may need to take a course or go job shadowing and that sort of thing. And we're going to see a little bit later how those challenges may be transferred over to your professional development plan. Okay. Now, another example is an employee may need to highlight a tool they may require to complete their task. So perhaps we have someone working on a project and they don't have the right software to complete a project. So again, this is where an employee may indicate or highlight that they require a specific tool that they need. Or the manager or employee may need to highlight the need for assistance on a particular issue or task, such as a request for leadership or coaching training. Okay. Now, just going back to the work plan. The final section is where managers will indicate the meeting date. So this is really providing a way to log that managers and employees are in fact having quarterly meetings, because it is extremely important in this process to have these quarterly check-in meetings to ensure employees are on track with regards to their work plan. Okay? So it is a drop-down box in which managers can select a specific date, and again, it will make note that these quarterly meetings are happening. It also serves a purpose as a rather than signing various pieces of papers and making various copies, it just provides a log that these meetings are taking place. Okay. Now, once this happens or once it's completed, it will be saved. Managers, you are to save it in your, again, on your hard drive or in your, if you have a database, cloud-based type system that you use, you can save it there. And what we do is what HR would like to ask is that managers, you forward a copy of the final work plan to HR. And what you can do is once you have all of them completed, just bulk it together, all your employees' work plans, and then send it to HR for review. And what will happen is that HR will take some time to review these work plans, at least initially until we get used to the process, and just to make sure that there are no gaps and that everyone is indeed following the process. So again, HR will only need that final version of the work plan. So that's the version that will be completed by January 15th that we will need. Okay? Now, some of you may be asking yourself, especially for managers, what is in it for me? It's a new process, and what am I really getting out of it? Well, setting objectives with employees defines how each employee will contribute to the achievement of the team's objectives and those of the supervisor. So the employees are really having an impact on your own objective as a manager and supervisor. The process of setting objectives ensure that goals are congruent and that assignments and resources are clearly allocated among all employees. Setting objectives with employees commands a much greater commitment from employees to specific objectives. So it isn't a one-way street. Both parties are truly vested in the objectives for employees for the year. So employees, you really do have a say as to how your work will get done. And managers, employees will start taking responsibility or continue to take responsibility for the objectives for the year. Okay. The process of setting objectives establishes the basis for the next APS. So this is the annual performance summary that will be completed at the end of this year. And again, for this year, we're not going to be doing the APS. We will do the APS next December 2015. And again, so for the APS, it identifies the employee's concerns, needs for assistance, and support. Now, employees, you're probably asking yourself the same question: what is in it for me? So for employees, setting objectives with a supervisor provides you with the opportunity to contribute to the way the job is going to be done. So again, you're really going to have a say as to what it will look like. Your manager will have specific objectives that you will have to complete, or goals or projects you will have to complete for the year. So that will always be there. But again, you will have a say or part of a say as to how that will get done. And that will happen through your conversation with your manager when you are meeting to develop this work plan. Next, the process of collaborative effort to setting objectives increases your commitment and motivation to these objectives. The process also ensures thorough understanding of what is expected. Setting objectives achieves a clear and concise understanding of how work will be measured and evaluated, enabling you to evaluate your own performance during the appraisal period and to make any adjustments. So because the work plan is very clear now, you had a say in how your objectives and plans and projects will be completed for the year. You can always go back to it and really at any point in time and just check off and do that checkpoint on your own as to where you are and what your performance is during the year. Next is objectives clarifies your priorities and allow you to allocate your time and resources effectively. So it's going to help you plan out your year. And the process of setting objectives allows you the opportunity to voice any problems, concerns, and ideas about what is to be accomplished. Okay? So next, again, HR will be conducting lottery audits, as we like to call it, from time to time, just to ensure the compliance of this particular process. Okay. Next, we are going to move forward to the annual performance summary. So again, this is the APS. Now, the annual performance summary is really meant to be a short, positive summary and discussion of the employee's work for the year. As you recall from the calendar that we looked at, the APS will be completed during the same time as the work plan. So again, not this year, starting next year. What will happen is in December, between December 1st to January 15th, you're going to have the annual performance summary review with managers and employees are going to come together to review this summary. And again, it's really meant to be short and a positive discussion, highlighting the great points for this year, discuss some lessons learned, and any additional comments. So in essence, this particular meeting should take no more than 30 minutes itself. Of course, there's going to be planning prior to that meeting, but the meeting itself, again, it's not going to take as much time as, say, what we once did with the employee development plan. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is just toggle over to the APS template. And as you can see, we're just carrying forward with the theme of simplicity. We wanted to make it easy to use, not threatening, and inviting, and a place for both the manager and employees to really feel free to indicate any comments. Now at the very top, it's again the very basic information. So it's employee name, job title, date, the employee's direct supervisor or manager, and division. And again, these are all text boxes. You can enter that information. Okay. Now for part one, this is where supervisors and employees will make notes, will obviously make notes prior to the meeting, but this is where they will jointly come together and list in the first section, greatest accomplishments of the employee and proudest moments of the year for the employees. So as mentioned, supervisors and employees, you are expected to make notes prior to this meeting, prior to coming together. And employees, this is where you're going to really talk about what you thought your greatest accomplishment was, your proudest moments, you know, what you're really proud of and wanted to make note of, and really point that out. And it could be, it doesn't even have to be something that, you know, a major accomplishment such as, you know, you completed a project. Just even things like building relationships. It could be around those soft skills. Again, things that you're really proud of and you really want to highlight and make note of to your manager is what you're going to enter in this section here. And supervisors, you're going to do the same thing. If you noticed, you know, throughout the year, some great accomplishments that the employee had throughout the year, some really breakthrough moments, you're going to want to indicate that in this section here as well. Okay? Now the next section is where employees, you're going to think about and reflect about those great accomplishments and identify if there were any lessons learned or if there's any regrets. So there might have been something that you did a great job on, you know, project was on time and on budget, but perhaps during that process you learned something, either about the way something was done, or you thought, oh, maybe I could have done this part a little bit better or more effectively. So those are the types of things you're going to list under the second section, under list any lessons learned, regrets, or breakthroughs. Okay, and managers, supervisors, you will do the same as well. So if you are monitoring a project that your employee is working on, you may have identified perhaps a different way, an alternate way of doing things or completing a task. So you may want to make a suggestion or list that under here. Again, it's supposed to be inspirational and positive and really reflecting on some great points for the year. Okay. Now for part two, we have sections for employee comments and supervisor comments. So employees, this is where you're going to list any other comments that you say you didn't list above with regards to greatest accomplishments. Okay? So this can just be, you know, your feeling, what you thought about something, perhaps an idea. Again, we talked about innovation in the work plan. Perhaps it's just reiterating your idea that you had on an innovative idea. So those types of things you would see under employee comments. Likewise, under supervisor comments, you're providing that inspirational summary to the employee about, you know, what they did for the year. And again, if there are any thoughts that you have as to, you know, how things can be better, it doesn't necessarily have to be related to what's indicated up here. But again, anything about, you know, the employee's year, you can indicate in this section. And then finally, in the last section, we have part three. So this is health and safety. So although we have on the work plan specific objectives listed, we want to include this again on the APS, again, just as a summary. So the first point, attended and completed any mandatory training. Managers, you're either going to select yes or no. Okay, so hopefully we will all see yes on the APS. Okay. Under promote a positive and healthy outlook in the workplace, again, it's going to be a yes or no, so hopefully we see many yeses. And what we'd like the manager to do is just to explain how the employee positively promoted a positive and healthy outlook in the workplace. And if they didn't, again, we want a bit of an explanation as to what that would look like for the employee. Okay? Next is the employee signature. So what we will require on the annual performance summary is employee signature, your direct supervisor or manager signature, and then a senior manager or director signature depending on your role. So 3 signatures we will require. Now again, because we are looking at hopefully not printing out too many papers or having many paper trails, you can save this as a PDF, and there is a function once it's saved in PDF to fill and sign the document. So it's a text box that would come up, and you can type in your initial or you can type in your full name, and it would actually create a signature for you in which you can place it on the signature line. Okay? Now once that happens, you save it, and then HR will need to receive a copy. Managers, you will save a copy as well for yourself. Okay? And this one last section, do you recommend employee for an increase? So this is for managers. This is a drop-down box, so you would indicate yes, revisit, or an employee may already be at the top of their range. So if that's the case, then you would just indicate at top of range. If you choose revisit, managers, what we'd like you to do is choose a specific date that you are going to revisit and the increase for the employee. Okay? Now please note this is not directly correlated to any annual increments. Again, this is really pertaining to the annual increases that employees are entitled to. Okay? Okay. So next we are going to look at, if I go back to our presentation, the professional development plan. So this is new to TRCA. We did have, and you're going to see as we go through it, for those of you who have gone through the EDP, you're going to see some similar elements that, what was included in the EDP. What we've done is we've actually taken that portion out and make it its own document, because we really do feel it's an important document for the employee's development. So let's take a look, having said that, at what professional development is. What is a professional development plan? So a professional development plan is a planning document created by you that evaluates and highlights current professional development needs along with professional goals in the years to come. It is a tool used by many successful companies to assist employees in mapping out their careers in the organization that they work for. So again, under planning, the professional development plan will fall under planning. Okay? Now, you may ask yourself, why focus on professional development? Well, truth be told, the workplace is changing. It's becoming more challenging, and we really do want to stay ahead. Job security is not the same, so not to worry, everyone's job is secure here, but it really is not the same. Again, things are becoming more competitive, and because it's becoming more competitive and our industry is changing so rapidly with new technologies, it's extremely important to stay on top of those advancements and really continue to develop yourself as an employee. Okay? Next is flatter organization. So we're not seeing, or companies are at least shifting away from the flatter organization. So you're into the flatter organizations, I can say. So you're not seeing that continuous growth, that hierarchical type growth in an organization. So at times things can become quite vague when an employee is trying to figure out where they want to go in their career. So you're seeing more of that flatter organizations where there is more responsibility that's spread out because the climb up the corporate ladder is not as clear anymore. We're seeing employees taking more, when it comes to changing in their career, they're looking at more creative ways of doing it. So they perhaps may not be moving up per se, but they're going to take a lateral move, so they may move across into another area. Some may even take a step back, so literally, going back a level just in order to learn the skills that they need to get ahead. So, for example, when I initially when I was a project manager, I personally took a step back, so literally took a job level down in order to move into human resources, which I developed a passion for through my project management work. And yes, I took a step back in order to move forward. So when I moved to HR, I really built myself from ground up. I attained the skills that I needed to get to where I am today. So that's, again, as an employee, if you want to continue growing your career, you're going to have to look at more creative ways at developing yourself in order to move forward. Okay? So who holds the key to success? And I think we all know that answer. So it's up to you. It's not your manager. It's not TRCA. It's not your mentor. It's absolutely you, as you know where you want to go in your career. So just because you want to move forward, you want to continue to develop your knowledge and your skills, and it doesn't have to be about that climb up the corporate ladder. It doesn't have to be about monetary gains. You can develop yourself in doing different things. You can become a mentor, or really or look at developing a specific skill and become a subject matter expert. So things like that, those are things you can do to continue to build your knowledge base, to continue to become a more well-rounded employee in the organization. So again, it's not always about monetary. It's more of how to develop yourself as an employee in the organization and become more well-rounded. This is why this performance professional development plan is so important, because it allows for those types of things. Okay. Next is it's never final. So because you are in this continuous growth pattern, especially through this new process and developing work plans, it's never final. You're always going to want to continue to develop yourself in some way. And again, it doesn't mean that necessarily that you have to go on a course. It could just be developing yourself within your team, taking on a new skill within your team. So it's never really final. And it's never done. So because it's not final, it's never done. Again, you're continuously learning new things every day. It doesn't have to be in a formal setting. It could be through one of your projects you learn something. Through a conversation with your manager you can learn something. So it's never done. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual the professional development plan. So I'm just going to toggle over to that. And as you can see, for simplicity, we want to stay simple, not threatening. We've made it very simple and easy to use. So again, like with the other forms, very basic information that we would require: name, job title, date, manager, and division. We also have some very high-level instructions and guidelines listed. So these are things, key guidelines and instructions that we want you to keep in mind when you are completed this document. So the first thing is we have listed as PDP to be reviewed in your work plan meetings. Now, as you recall, we don't have that in the calendar. We've actually made this optional. You can review your PDP in your work plan meetings because you can have activities indicated from your work plan indicated on your PDP. So if you recall earlier in the work plan spreadsheet under comments, where you would highlight a comment if there was an issue. This is where you would see those types of things listed on this PDP. So for example, if a manager was to indicate a performance gap on a work plan, such as an employee has to complete a task, but they need a specific skill, so that's their performance gap. So what they would do is indicate what that performance gap is in this professional development plan. So perhaps it might be, I need someone to have project management skills. The employee does not have project management skills, therefore they need to go and take a course on project management. So what will happen is under skills and competency, an employee can indicate project management because that is a skill or a skill that they require to do their job well. Okay? Now, the next point is all employees are entitled to 3 days for professional development per year. So this is new for the organization, where all employees are entitled to a minimum of 3 days of professional development per year. Now, one thing that does not change is that employees, you must have your manager's approval before registering for any training. So if there is a specific training that you need or a program that you'd like to take part of, you need to have that conversation with your manager, gain their approval before moving forward with any plans, okay? And this is just to ensure that your manager is obviously aware of what your plans are and can support you where needed, as well as they will be able to manage and ensure that the task that's required to get done will still get done. So it allows that time for managers to put plans in place if there is a training or professional development that you'd like to be part of. Okay, so again, must get your manager's approval. So for part one, as mentioned, this is where you're going to list skills and competencies. So in my example that I had mentioned, where an employee may need some skills on project management, this is where you can indicate that specific skill. We do have other skills that can be listed as well. If there is a skill or competency not listed in that drop box, there is an other section where you can indicate any other type of skill or competency that's not listed in that drop box. Okay? Now, as an employee, what we would ask is that you have to select at least one skill or competency to be developed, and a maximum of 3. So no more than 3, because we want to make sure that it is something that you can actually work into your work for the year and that it's attainable. Okay? So again, no more than 3, but a minimum of 1. Okay? Now there are some employees who are, happy with what they are doing right now, and they really don't want to move into the next role, just really happy with where they are, and they want to continue to develop in that role, okay? Which is absolutely fine as well. But again, it could be something that you may become an expert in. So again, if you are a project manager and you want to continue to become really skilled at project management, perhaps you would indicate project management, okay? But again, we want a minimum of 1 at least to be selected. Okay. The next column is if you would indicate, employees, you would indicate whether this skill or competency is a want or a need. So a need is something that is essential to perform your job. So you will not be able to complete your job or complete a task or objective without this skill. So that's where you would indicate that it's a need. Okay. A want is something that's nice to have, and it may not impact your role directly, but can have a positive or beneficial impact to the organization. So in those situations, you would indicate that it is a want. Okay? And reasons why this training is beneficial, you would indicate why you feel this training or the skill or competency is beneficial to your role in the organization, how it will contribute to TRCA's future. So again, you may include elements as to how it will impact things like the strat plan. Okay? So again, you will indicate how it will contribute to TRCA. Next is vehicle or resources. So these are different ways that you can attain the skill or competency you have listed. So we have an external course. So this is a course that you would do obviously offsite of TRCA. We also have online internal training. So this is our learning management system that we are developing. Currently, we currently has our orientation and fleet training and some of our safety training on there. We are looking at expanding that to include more soft skills training. So that is another vehicle you can use to develop a skill or competency. Self-directed studies is really pertaining to reading a book, reading an article, white pages, things that you are doing on your own time and really managing it on your own. Okay? Job shadowing is basically what it is. It's job shadowing. You are observing or shadowing someone performing a specific function. Next, we have the mentorship program. So this is a new program that we are developing at TRCA. We currently have some test groups that are testing out the process right now, and we are hoping to roll out this program in January 2015. So if you were interested in taking part in this mentorship program, you would indicate this here. Just keep in mind, not everyone would be able to take part in the mentorship program because there are specific guidelines around it, but it is an option there for employees as a vehicle or a resource in obtaining a specific skill or objective. And if there are any questions about this specifically, please feel free to reach out to me. Mastery project, so this is an employee taking on a project to develop a specific skill. And then lastly, secondment or on loan. So this is where an employee may go into another department to work on a specific assignment. Once that assignment is over, they would return back to their team and their original role. Okay? The next section is time frame. So just like with the other forms, just like the work plan, I should say, any time frames associated with attaining the skills or competency. So it could be a couple of months, a specific date if you're going on a course, or it can be something that's just ongoing. Okay. The next section is status. So this is the status of where you are with attaining the skill or competency. So it can be it's not started, in progress, completed, or delayed. And if it is delayed, this is where you can indicate any comments to indicate reasoning as to why the training or your learning may be delayed. Okay. Now, part 2 is where you would indicate employees. This is where you're going to indicate your career interests. So this is including anything well beyond the scope of your current role. Okay, so this is where you would indicate your short-term goals in your first section. So short-term goals are goals that span no more than 2 years. So you indicate what those short-term goals are, how you will get there. So it could be very similar to the vehicles or resources, or it could be something different. It could just be through on-the-job assignments, things like that. So that's what you would indicate how you will get there. Approximate time frame. So it could be a few months if you plan on taking on a project. It could be a specific date. So again, you want to indicate time frames and any comments associated with attaining their short-term goals. So we ask you that you limit it to 3, again, because we want to make sure that it is something that is attainable for all employees. And given that you still are responsible for your normal day-to-day roles and responsibilities and goals, okay? The next section we have is long-term. So this is anything spanning past 2 years. Now under long-term, we've actually made it optional, so it's not mandatory. And the reason being is because some employees just are not quite sure where they want to go after 2 years. Some employees work in roles that change all the time, so it doesn't really lend for that long-term stability, vision, that sort of thing. So, which is absolutely fine. So really, that's why we decided to make long-term, 3 to 5 years, that section. We made it optional. So if you have a clear vision as to where you'd like to go, you could absolutely fill that in. It's very similar to short-term career goals, where you would indicate your long-term goal, how you plan on getting there, time frame, and any comments associated with it. Okay. And like with all the other documents, they are to be saved and continue to monitor. Now, as I mentioned, it can be reviewed in the work plan meetings, as it does provide for that overlap between the two, but it doesn't have to be. So it's optional between the employee and manager if they would like to include that. Okay. Okay, so having said that, we have reached the end of the performance management training, process training. So if you have any questions, please feel free again to reach out to me. Again, my email address is lpersad@trca.on.ca, or my extension is extension 5647. Thank you so much. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Take care.